Well, Tasha and Russell, they both love reading books. Tasha and Russell, they both love reading books. Well, what do you do when you share such a
Welcome
love?
to the
Well, you start
102nd
a club,
episode of
you
the
start a
ABC
club, an
Pod, the
adult
Adult
book
Book
club,
Club
an
with
adult
Taja and
book
Russell. I am Russell.
club,
She is
and a
Taja.
Hello, hello.
Hello,
podcast.
and welcome back, everybody, to the podcast where we drink and we read things. And on this episode, we read The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. But before we get to that, it has been 3 weeks, Taja. What has been going on in your neighborhood?
I mean, Dragon Con happened,
Did.
and it was awesome. I think our cosplays were a success. Our con fam is like just choice. I love our people. And the swag game this year was on point. I have like an entire bag of really cool shit that I got. And it was really satisfying to exchange swag with people. So yeah, the little like dragon hoarder type person in me is very excited about that aspect of Dragon Con. Um, yeah, I think overall it was a success. I think we've talked about this before. I appreciate years where there's not somebody that I must see. So it leaves me open to like tag along with other people going to things and just be really open and not feel too much pressure. And so, yeah, it's a little easier to have wild fun when you're not focused on one thing or person or whatever. Um, and I got a new tattoo, which is Farscape related. And I'm excited about that. It still needs to be finished, and I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt, so I'm not going to show it. And it's a podcast, so you can't see it anyway if you're listening.
Maybe coming
Um,
soon to YouTube. Maybe. We'll see if we figure it
maybe,
out. Just
maybe.
for you, Joe, if you're watching this ever.
Hi. And then also just like the horrors persist. This is a terrible place.
This is
What
a
a crazy time to be alive.
terrible timeline.
Yep.
I had the same and opposite experience at Dragon Con as you did, as I did love our con family. I think we had the perfect amount of time on the floor and time hanging out in the room,
Mm,
time hanging out at the bar. Like, I didn't have that typical, especially Saturday experience where I like
mm.
blow a gasket or need to go hide or curl up into a ball in a corner somewhere. But I still felt like I really experienced the con and the floor and everything. And we had, I think we got our cosplay timing down right, where before we'd
Yes.
always pushed it off to nighttime, especially for our group stuff. And this
It was
getting it out in
silly.
the open right away worked really
Yep.
well, a lot better. And focusing on just a couple instead of trying to do as many as possible, I think also worked really well for us. And yeah, the swag game was fun. It's just hide and seek basically, which who doesn't love that?
Love it. Love it.
The where I had the opposite situation you did is Simon Pegg came this year, and when we started going to con, we talked about who would be our number one, and he has always been my number one because I never thought he would come. So seeing him was very exciting, and even though I was like, we went to the panel and saw him, and I felt like the smartest man alive because I had had just enough wine to be
He
drunk
knew
confident.
he knew all the answers that Simon Pegg was going to give before he gave them.
Most, but that first day especially felt, I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, I
Yeah.
was in the really
The
right
sweet spot of
window.
drunk.
Yep. Yep. So then meeting him to get his autograph and everything was really awesome and definitely felt, it just felt like such a good moment. It wasn't a sour moment at all. And he was really great and gave me time, which is what we go for and what we appreciate. So that was great. I was glad to get that done on Saturday. So then I still had Sunday and Monday to enjoy the con per usual. And yeah, just seeing our friends, the fact that we see them once a year at this thing really makes it that much more special. So, for any of them listening, we love you guys. It's always incredible to see you. And
We got to
nobody
do
got,
it more than just once a year. We got to figure
yes,
out a way to do that.
try to work on that. And nobody got COVID this year. So, that's the bonus.
Big time bonus.
Aside from that, as the month rolls on, I've been switching gears into band stuff. So our my band, the Scraps, we are preparing to play back-to-back weekend shows over in Portsmouth. Saturday, the 20th, we're playing Porch Fest, which is only like a 35-minute set with a band that we played with before at the press room. And then the 27th, we are part of a firefighter charity fundraiser for New Hampshire firefighters and to help with their fights against cancer and all this other stuff because people don't realize, but that's the suits that they wear to protect them from fires. As soon as they put that on, 20% more of a chance to get cancer because of it's so carcinogenic what it's made out of. So really happy to be able to be helping with that. You can check out our Instagram, the Scraps Band NH, all one word, to find out links to the shows and tickets and all that stuff if anyone's interested. Or you can reach out at Adult Book Club 21 and I can direct you the proper way. So we've been practicing. We had our first practice. When was that? Great edit. We had a first practice earlier this week for that. And we have another one next week, which is even better because we have two practices before a show, which we've never really done before. And we're trying to add two new songs. So we've got a lot going on there, and I'm very excited to do that. We also had first week of football, which, as always, was a success with um, just getting together with a couple different friends, a couple different days, having some beers, watching football, and enjoying the first week of fantasy. So, all in all, a good 3 weeks, I will say. For those of you following along on an episodic basis, we did take an extra week to finish this book with kind of everything going on. We always think we're going to read more at Dragon Con, and then we're too busy spending time with people that we love, and we don't really get to the book. And because this was a longer one, we decided to push it off a week. So we appreciate you waiting for us to get this out to you. And on that note, this is your every episode reminder to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. We are at Adult Book Club 21. That is all one word, Adult Book Club and the number 21. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter. Mostly we're just adding to stories. We don't really load up your feed. So, with that, we move back to the book, which once again was The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. Now, The Blade Itself was the debut novel for Abercrombie and was originally published in 2006 as the beginning of the First Law trilogy. The set was completed with Before They Are Hanged in 2007 and The Last Argument of Kings in 2008. The trilogy then grew into a series which contains three other standalone novels, a second trilogy titled The Age of Madness, and two other short story collections. Aside from this series, Abercrombie has written a large quantity of short fiction, as well as his Shattered Sea trilogy, which is the one we had previously read separately and talked about on this podcast. And he had his newest book, The Devils, released in May of this year. It was also announced that Abercrombie will write together with director James Cameron to bring The Devils to the big screen once
Wow.
Cameron is done with his latest Avatar movie. So maybe coming more mainstream, I guess. Although I think Joe Abercrombie's a name a lot of people know at this point. But
Yeah.
I mean, with James Cameron, come on. So
That's a big name.
on that note, Taj, if you want to read us the jacket, we will get started.
All right, Logan Nine Fingers, infamous barbarian, has finally run out of luck. Caught in one feud too many, he's on the verge of becoming a dead barbarian, leaving nothing behind him but bad songs, dead friends, and a lot of happy enemies. Nobleman, dashing officer, and paragon of selfishness, Captain Giselle Dan Luthar has nothing more dangerous in mind than fleecing his friends at cards and dreaming of glory in the fencing circle. But war is brewing, and on the battlefields of the frozen north, they fight by altogether bloodier rules. Inquisitor Glocta, cripple turned torturer, would like nothing better than to see Giselle come home in a box. But then Glocta hates everyone. Cutting treason out of the Union one confession at a time leaves little room for friendship. His latest trail of corpses may lead him right to the rotten heart of government, if he can stay alive long enough to follow it. Enter the wizard Baez, a bald old man with a terrible temper and a pathetic assistant. He could be the first of the Magi. He could be a spectacular fraud, but whatever he is, he's about to make the lives of Logan, Giselle, and Glocta a whole lot more difficult. Murderous conspiracies rise to the surface, old scores are ready to be settled, and the line between hero and villain is sharp enough to draw blood. Unpredictable, compelling, wickedly funny, and packed with unforgettable characters, The Blade itself is noir fantasy with a real cutting edge. Get it? Because it's the
Got it.
blade.
Because it's a blade. Nice. So kind of as that points out, which is interesting, because I don't, again, I don't read the backs of most of the things we do.
Yeah.
So until I go to write spoilers, because I'm like, okay, so when Taja reads this, where does it leave us off?
Mm.
And I think the listeners who maybe haven't read this book can see just from that it doesn't really focus on the story. It focuses on each of the characters. And it's like, here's this. And this story, first of all, you can tell it's the first in a series because it's basically all laying the base for future works. But instead of doing like the world building, which there is still some of that,
Mhm.
it focused mostly on character building, and we spent a lot of time with these different characters. So a lot of the conversation is really going to be focused around them. We start with the first main three point of views, and we're going to do that in order of how they're introduced. So starting with Logan Nine Fingers, I want to know what you thought of our Northman.
So he was sort of like oddly relatable given that he's kind of a badass. He it like the way that his info is provided to you, like his backstory and stuff, it really piques my curiosity. Um, I think just overall he's kind of an easy guy to like root for. Um, and I think you're supposed to. Um, but I think yeah, overall I think relatable is weirdly the term that comes to mind because again, he's like effectively a badass Viking.
I mean, just the fact that they mentioned like he's a barbarian Northman there, like immediately draws me to like a D&D character. Like
Totally.
the fact that he's called Logan Nine Fingers, which first of all in the North, to be a named man is a big deal. So he's earned that name, but then he's earned a second name as the Bloody Nine. I was
Mhm.
just immediately jealous that like that seems like such a cool character to play.
Totally.
And we see some of that come into play later on. But he felt to me very much like your standard hero. He
Hmm.
has been around the block for way too long, covered in scars and old battle wounds, and he's tired. And he doesn't really like the man that he has become. Yeah,
True.
very much like the Black Widow, right? Where she
Mm.
tells Hawkeye, like, I'm trying to make up for all the red in my ledger. Like, it
Mhm.
seems like that's what Logan's whole goal is, where he doesn't want to he doesn't want to add more deaths to his name and will try anything he can to get out of confrontation, which makes him an interesting part to this little group that we're building because I think they expect him to be what he
Bloodthirsty.
was. Yeah,
Yeah.
murderous. But I appreciated even we see it off the bat with the apprentice Kwai, where he even says like I have to pick you up and carry you, I think it was 40 miles or something like
Mm.
that, while you're fevered out of your mind and dying. And he leaves his pot behind. And he's like, because he needs to drop as much weight as possible. He's like, I'm really gonna miss that pot. And he's like, there's whatever 5, 10 years ago, Logan would have never thought twice. It was pot over this guy. Let's empty his pockets and leave him. And now
Yeah.
it's just him trying to get some kind of, I don't know, solace at the end of his bloody life. So immediately connected with him, immediately wanted to know more. And like I appreciated we hear bits and pieces of his story, but there's
Mm.
still a
Lots of
mystery
unknowns.
with
Yeah.
him,
Yeah, like he mentions his like wife and kids and stuff at one point, and you're kind of like, never even would have considered.
right? Oh, and then we get a little bit more of the backstory of the North itself through his
Mhm.
band of merry men that he believes are dead. And we kind of hear about this because the North are attacking the Union. So this is like the big conflict that a lot of our characters are concerned about. So we know about the leader of them is Bethod, and we hear about how he rules and how he's merciless and all this stuff. And then we learn Logan's connection to him and like how he was part of that for so long. And a lot of it just again, the more you learn about him, the more layers there are to him, the more I think he starts really relatable, and then you
Mhm.
just really start to like him as well.
Totally.
So definitely a strong one to start off with, which makes our second one a little bit more interesting, and that is the Inquisitor Sand Dan Glotka. What was your impression of this incredibly broken man?
Oh, like super broken. I'm not really entirely sure if he's like good or bad guy.
Hmm.
I think that's probably the intention is to kind of have him in this gray area. I did find it really interesting how his is the only character that we have any sort of internal monologue for, which just really stood out to me.
Yeah.
Because I mean, clearly there's some sort of purpose for that, but um it was just such a blatant difference during his POVs. Um that I mean, it certainly adds something to the story, and I do appreciate his sort of like self-deprecating, um, a little bit of a boo-hoo, cry me a river sometimes, but totally
The
understandable
man was tortured for
considering.
700 days, Tasha.
Yeah. But I mean, like, he doesn't need to put himself in this position now. Like, he could have been doing something that isn't so physically taxing. Like this is the bed he chose, and I'm sure there are reasons that we don't yet know about. And he's obviously very intelligent. It was interesting getting the pieces that we did of his past as well, and kind of his previous connections, and like, he's a nobleman. I don't,
Yeah.
I mean, still is, but like, he's higher up in the echelon of like society, I guess, but everyone looks down on him because he's like all crippled and he's missing teeth, and all of it's not like of his own making. This is the situation he's in. I don't know. I think he was maybe one of the more interesting characters, but that I feel like we didn't really get too much about his past. For all of the internal monologuing that we did get, I still feel like I'm not really sure what his motivations are, or like which side he's on, or which side is the one that you should be on.
Yeah, his arc really interests me, and I think we saw more of it towards the end of the story.
Mhm.
I think for the trilogy, his part leaves off the most intriguing,
Yeah.
with where he's going and kind of I don't know, the rust he shakes off kind of at the end as we learn more about his past. But before that, I think to your point, the idea of the internal monologue, why I think that was so important was I think Abercrombie wants us to like see more of the picture of Glotka. Where if we just, we've had this in other books too, where like I feel like if you don't get that, where you don't see what they're thinking, or you don't, realize how every movement is pain for him and like getting up and yeah, everything, you would just think he's this miserable old crone who is like
Yeah.
against everybody. And what's his motivation? To gain power because he lost it or something. But because we get that internal monologue, you realize how broken he really is. And even he
Yeah.
doesn't know. I don't think he knows what he's doing or why he's doing it.
That's a good point.
I think there's a big part of him that knows that without a purpose, he'd probably be dead. And
Mm.
like, so he wants to stay. It's
Focused
like,
on something.
yeah, stay active. It's like they talk about
Yeah.
that if you retire and you stop working and stop moving, you
Yeah.
age so much faster. I
Right.
think there's part of him that worries about that. And to your point about how he's a nobleman that's looked down upon, he's like the war hero because he is. He's was one of the first through at this thing, and he ended up being captured. But he's the reminder of what you lose in the war. And like I feel like that happens in society too, where if you have people who come back incredibly um, changed physically
Yeah.
or mentally, people don't like to look at that because it's like
Yeah.
that physical reminder of what somebody else went through. And that's what
That's a
Glock
good.
is. And he like embraces it. Where like whether he's in his little torture chamber torturing somebody or in public with the nobility because he's still in those circles, he's like, "Oh, look at me,"
Yeah,
like
he doesn't like hide away from it.
yeah,
I think that it's also interesting because he was like a really promising swordsman too. Like, I think that that's part of the reason why Giselle is such a thorn in his side, is because he probably sees a lot of himself in that young man, and like, what a thin line in the sand that was,
yeah.
he before and after kind of thing.
Yeah, his sliding door moment, doing
Yeah,
something that he
totally.
was supposed to do. Again, being the hero, that then gets him in this position where now nobody can even look at him.
Right.
I completely understand that, and it's like anybody older looking down at somebody younger, being like, you don't know how well you have it,
Yeah.
like you stop taking advantage of this and all that. Like, yeah, I did like his anger towards Giselle, and I thought that really made a lot of sense.
Oh,
Uh,
for sure.
and also Giselle will get to him in a second. So that's
Yes.
yeah. The other part
Yes.
of Glocka, I think, which was important, was he is kind of our peek behind the curtain about
Mm.
all the shadowy politicking that's going on. As we see, his boss is undermining people that are kind of on a similar level of him in the structure because the king is useless and just sleeps all the time and kind of has his right hand man running the show. And now all these underlings are trying to gain a foothold to be the next one in line. And we see that through Glocka's eyes, where if we didn't have that perspective, we wouldn't know. Like he used that to really world build and show us more of what's happening behind the scenes, which builds your intrigue about, again, starting off with knowing this is book one, realizing that that's going to be the overarching one of the overarching themes here is that grasp for power.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So moving on, we touched on him a couple times, but our last character we're going to touch on pre-spoilers is Captain Giselle Luther. How did you feel about our noble fencer?
Oh, what an entitled prick. Yeah, I did not like him. He was very much giving like Ivy League Chad. Um, yeah, I didn't, I mean, I'm assuming that that's the whole point, is that he's not supposed to be particularly likable. And I guess that's what makes like what you're talking about character arcs all the more, I guess, impressive. But yeah, he's pretty despicable, selfish and elitist and classist. Yeah, he's very easy not to like.
So I said my first word was douche with like
Oh,
7 or 8
100%.
U's.
Yeah,
Whenever we went to his point of view, I can understand why he's there, but I didn't really enjoy reading him because he's just
yeah,
such a prick.
yeah.
And yeah, you can see that there's a point to that. Like again, kind of similar to Glatka. What I appreciate is all our characters had growth even in this book. Like we're not waiting for
Hmm.
book two or
Right,
book three to see it. So we do
right.
see a change in Luther as the story goes on. But for a lot of the book, you're just reading about how he thinks he's so much better than everybody else and how he looks down on everybody else and how he's just like a raging cunt to everybody. And it's just so frustrating because he thinks he's so much better just because of how he was born. And we even see it with his fencing training, where he's not even,
Mm,
he's like gifted, but if he took it seriously, he would be so much better.
yeah. He reminded me a lot of from the um oh, what is that? The Bloodborne? No, Blood Sworn trilogy. Guthvar, the Jarl's nephew.
Yeah.
He gave me like that kind of like entitled prick who thinks he's so much better, but actually is like kind of.
I mean, Luther was at least more talented than Gudvar
That's true.
was.
That's true. But he was like kind of a scaredy cat all the time and was just always looking out for himself and yeah.
Well, again, it's that typical, because his relationship with West, I found
Oh,
really
so
interesting.
icky. I didn't like it. It made me really uncomfortable.
With Major West.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, also, I just didn't like it because it was like the kind of person that he's keeping around to make himself feel better, that he can talk down to, and like it's like the like a pretty girlfriend who keeps an ugly girl around to make herself look better.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, what I didn't like about it was that he talked down about West, like he was fine face to face, kind of
But
exactly what you're
then he like
saying.
talks shit about him
But West was like whatever, he's the first man through at Dagosca or whatever it was, and he is a commoner who has risen up through the ranks because
by
of
merit.
yes, because of what he has done in battle. He has fought 3 campaigns and like 4 other whatevers, and
But he's
uh
still a commoner, so he's shitty.
yeah, but I'm still better than because I was born that way. And it would be interesting to see what happens when Luther sees his first actual combat, whether he
Yeah.
does go like Gudvar and shits himself and runs away, and then tries to bang his chest afterwards and like, oh, we all did that. It's like, I don't
Yeah.
remember seeing you there, Luther.
That feels like what's gonna happen.
It does. So yeah, he feels like our dumb little kid that we're supposed to root for and see him grow, or maybe we don't. I don't know. It was interesting because I feel like Logan was so immediately you connected
Hmm.
with him because he seems like your typical, again, fantasy hero. But the other two, it's kind of up to you on what you want to feel about them because I don't think you immediately connect with them. And like with Glatka, you can feel bad for him and pity him, which he would fucking hate. And with Luthar, you could fucking hate him, which he would probably appreciate, but you're still stuck with him. So it's like, what are we gonna do now?
Yeah.
But I do think it's the easiest way to make them grow. We're just waiting for Luthar to pull his head out of his fucking ass.
Yeah.
We'll see if that
Wonderful.
happens.
Mm.
So moving away from the characters, we did deal with some world building here as well throughout these pages. I was wondering what you thought and how well Abercrombie portrayed the world he built with the cities, politics, magical system, histories, etc.
I think it was um very vast what he created in terms of world building. I think um I often got a little lost in my understanding of places and the politicking of, warring factions or whatever. There was just a lot. Um, but I think that he did a good job kind of having that sort of happen secondarily to the people, the characters
Mm.
that he was developing. So it wasn't as though I was totally lost in the entire story just because I was lost sometimes in the world building. Um, I think that part of that might have been the the constant changing of POVs too. You're trying to keep in your head what you learned about the space
Mm.
from one person versus another person. And then, yeah, I don't know. I think overall it was good what he created. It seems really solid, and I can absolutely see this as the base of such a large series. I mean, if it's more than just these three books in terms of the world that he's built. Um, but yeah, I think it wasn't too bogging down in terms of descriptions, and it wasn't too light that I was totally lost, but I definitely did have a hard time kind of keeping the specifics, keeping track of those.
Yeah, I felt like he wanted to do a lot in these different sections, and he kind of is just lumping it in, as you said, at random points in our POVs, which is better than the
Mhm.
vomit of
Mhm.
world building or whatever. But it did make it a little bit harder to keep track. Like the fact that their history is like mythical, where it's the two brothers that are always fighting, and Jevons creates the Magi, which Baez is part of, and like a lot of this comes through Baez's eyes,
Mhm.
which we'll touch on him post spoilers as we get more into the whole character there. But being the first of the Magi, we learn more about that, and like we kind of hear it's like any mythological history where it's like, oh, think of anything. Icarus flew too close to the sun. Right? You hear it, you reference it, you say it in passing, whatever. And they kind of did that where they were like, oh, the maker did XYZ, whatever. And this happened. And we know about Baez, the first of the Magi, but he's this being that lived centuries ago. So, whatever. I found it interesting that Baez, spoilers, being alive kind of brings that mythology to life. And I wonder
Mhm.
what that would be like in our worlds where I guess it
Hmm.
would be like if Jesus actually came back or something, where this mythological creature you've been told about and all these stories about is suddenly walking amongst you and has proof that they are who they say they are, at least as far as we know. So that is huge. And we're dealing with that again with like random conversations. And then the political system, where again, the king is shit. So we have his advisor, Huff, I think his name was. And then you've got the closed council, and then you've got the open council, and then you've got the merchants, and you've got the spice, and like all these different guilds and everything. And everyone kind of has a little bit of power, but everyone wants more.
I think that the part that was the most confusing was the things from Glocta's point of view with the um
The
what's his boss's
Archlector.
name? Yeah, the Archlector. Like it was really hard to determine like if he was corrupt and was like doing shit. Like that bit just kind of threw me off because there wasn't really any clear understanding on my part, I guess, of the way that the political system worked. Because like you were saying, like there's the king and there's these councils and there are these like merchant guilds and whatnot. And like I think because we started out kind of early on with Glokta's point of view, I felt like we just got thrown into all this stuff and I was like, I don't get this. Like I don't understand why it matters that this guy is doing something shady when it actually he might not have been doing sh something shady and you're having him, that all of that was just kind of like messy.
It,
Um,
it definitely felt like the Arch-Lector was trying to gain power. And
yeah,
as Glotka knows, with torture, you'll eventually break people. They'll
right.
eventually tell you whatever you want. And like
Right.
we see that early on where he's torturing Simon Roos and he's like, "Oh, add a name to that confession." And it's like the next guy up they can
Yeah.
then go after the next guy who is
Yeah.
like whatever, an underling of the boss on the closed council or something. So I get what you're saying, where it's like because we know Glotka, it's like okay, we're supposed to believe that he's on the right side of it, but there's so many shady and I don't think he's involved in the shadiness. I think he's just doing his job. But his boss, the Arch-Lector, definitely comes off super fucking shady.
Big time, big time. And like I think that that's from a world building perspective, you kind of have to get dropped sort of in the middle of things happening. Otherwise, the whole book is going to be eaten up by explanatory bullshit that's boring.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I think I found that most confusing because it was at the start of things, and I was like, I don't understand who these people are and what it matters, like how it matters, any of that. Um, but yeah.
And this is
So
kind of
overall, I think it was good. It was just like
it
intense.
was a lot. And
Yeah.
I think this is where very similar to my complaints about the Wheel of Time,
Mm.
if you're gonna have especially characters with three damn names, like even if
Oh
it's just
God.
Dan, Stan, Dan Glotka, like that just adds something, right? It just adds a little bit more. And when you have a lot of characters that have that, I think it's easier to mix them up and it's like a sign of their nobility or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And like you said early on with jumping around, like eventually our three main point of views all come together in a duo, which is like the
Mhm.
capital city. But before that, with Logan going through what he's going through, and we have some secondaries that are on another continent, it seems like, and in the north and whatever. I kept looking back to be like, there's a map, right? Did I just miss
There's
it?
not. I thought that too a couple of times.
So if you're gonna do that, first of all, do a map because it will be helpful for some people. I think I at least would have peeked at it from time to time just to make sure I was on the right track.
I think
Uh,
it's like what T. Kingfisher was saying in that panel of
yeah,
like when she's building world building and doing all of these series where they're like close to each other or whatever, you have to have a map to make sure that you're not like putting something on top of something else or it's not actually feasible for these things to happen. Yeah, a map would have been super helpful. I think I would have referenced it at least once.
and then on top of that, the way the what the Wheel of Time did right was a glossary. So if you
Mm,
do have all these people with very, again, like it's so dumb, but having Dans and Vans in the middle of stuff makes a lot of people seem familiar. So to be able to go like, okay, that's the head purser or whatever, and that's the head of this, whatever, it would just help if you
to
needed it in a pinch.
clarify.
Yeah,
Yeah. I also, and I'm not sure if I've got this right, but the maker, I felt like there were a few people whose like names or whatever were interchangeable. Like, maybe I'm wrong about this, but is the maker the same as Kennedius or whatever?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so like that was confusing because then they were referring to them as the maker and then Kennedius, and I'm like, is that the same person? Is that not the same person? Like, if you're gonna, as you said, have a glossary, have a way for us to quick reference what we're talking about here. There's just a lot going on, which commendable because like he did it in, you can tell he really thought about this and it's very well organized, but for the reader who knows nothing about it, we're not inside his brain, it would have been helpful to have some tools.
I agree. Yeah, and again, it's already 500 and something pages long for a
Yeah.
debut novel. That's a lot. So I can see
Hmm.
them not wanting to invest more in it. But yeah, I think it could have been something they could have added later on. And maybe in the second or third book they do. But
Yeah.
These are small complaints. Uh, the other thing I enjoyed was that even though you don't know much about how the magical system works, like so the first law, which is what this series is called, is like you can't touch the
Don't need
others.
people.
What is it?
Oh, the other side. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can't touch the other side or something like that. Meaning like magic, the power of magic comes from like a darkness kind of
Hmm.
situation. And we learned from Baez that that power is kind of dwindling. We learned from Logan very early on that the spirits he used to commune with, which sound like kind of like Fae style, are disappearing as well. And they're going into a slumber as magic is kind of leaving the world. So I appreciate that too, because I really like when magic isn't just like I like when
Easy.
I like when it's consumable, where
Hmm.
it's like there's a certain amount and then you're
Finite
done.
amount.
It's
Yeah.
not just like I'm gonna throw a fireball like my bard used to do. Fireball, sleep,
Mhm.
fireball, fireball. Like I appreciate when you have
There's
to
a
choose
cost
when
to
to use
it.
it. Yeah, and a
Yeah.
cost, yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of good setups there, and then the last thing, just setting up the conflicts where we
Mm.
have the North coming in to attack the Union, but we also have the fear of the other empire, which I forgot to write down. Um,
The G.
yeah, it began with a G.
Goska, Ghost.
Dagoska was a city
There was a G something. Shit. See, this is where glossary would be really helpful.
or a map.
Or a map. Oh my God, I don't know.
Glukal? Something like that? Gluckle?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Something like that. Or a pronunciation guide. But anyway, the fact that we have that building up on two fronts, again, you're doing a good job of setting it up for the future where it's like it's stuff that you don't expect to be solved in book one.
Hmm.
And it's like adding to the intrigue because it's affecting your characters and changing where they're going. So I appreciated that. I thought he did really well with both broad and fine strokes on
Yeah.
his world building, while focusing mainly on these characters that are going to carry us through, I assume, this series.
Right. I
So,
agree.
on that note, before we get to spoilers, we have your get to know your podcaster question. And this one is about Logan and his crew. So we learn that each man in Logan's crew has a special ability or reputation, which one of them, oh, we learn that each man in Logan's crew has a special ability or reputation. I was wondering which one of them do you think best relates to you, and which one would you choose to be if they differ?
So the one that relates to me is probably the weakest.
I said the same.
Yeah. Like I don't think I'm on par with any of these dudes, which by the way, we didn't discuss them. I loved their POV chapters. I think they were some of the most fun. It also gave me sort of the Bloodsworn trilogy vibes of like the found family and all that. And yeah. But if I had to choose, I'd probably say Grimm and the marksman. Because that's fucking badass. And I don't want to be in charge.
I appreciated how quiet he was too.
Yeah.
Like, because I couldn't do that. So the fact that they even mentioned like he could go, because a lot of our chapters, I think all of our chapters are through Dogman's eyes,
Mhm.
and he's like, it's funny the things that he will use his breath for, where he doesn't
Yeah.
say anything, and then he'll just point out something really obvious or it's something.
Super,
Yeah, it's like
yeah.
we all see it. It's like you haven't spoke for 4 days, and that's what you decided to say. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Of course, we all see it. Yeah, I did appreciate their chapters too. And spoilers before spoilers, Logan believes his crew is dead. We find out that they're not.
I'm so excited for them to eventually meet up again because
I
that's gonna be
know, waiting for that moment. I
yeah,
appreciate that he gave us that too, because I think that's like that fun cutscene you would see in a movie or a show, or
totally.
whatever, where it's like,
Where they
hey, these
both
guys,
think they're dead.
they're still dusting themselves off. And for the other side, they see Logan get pulled over a cliff, so they believe Logan's dead. So nobody knows who's alive. I really appreciated that. And then they still build their own characters up, as we saw with Forley, who was the weakest, who I also believed I would be. And we learn, this maybe is too many spoilers before spoilers, but we learned that Logan was the champion for Bethlehem, and he defeated all these men without killing them, and then basically turned them into his crew when they were
He like
exiled.
left. Yeah.
for no longer following orders. So Foley was sent out to him as like kind of a joke, I guess, as like the champion of his people because they knew he would just be easily defeated and they'd kind of given up. And instead of just easily killing him, Logan kept him around. And he does have that like puppy, the kind one, the soft one, the one that you all look after. Like he's a uniting force because we all know we have to
Protect
look
him
out for
and
him.
yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I don't know if I want all of that. I do feel like in a battle, I'd be the one hiding in the bushes.
Same.
But if I could choose one, I think I'd be Rudd Three Trees, because I appreciated his like he liked following Logan, but he knew that in the vacuum of Logan being gone, somebody had to step up, and you couldn't leave it to like Black Dow or anything like that. Like it needed to be somebody firm. And if I could be one of them, if I could take his tributes, I would want his bravery as we see him like face down a group of 12 riders by himself with just his shield, and he's kind of like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna take you out because of who you are, basically, and having no fear. I thought he was really cool, and I hope we get to spend time with him. And I will say, like for pacing reasons, I thought that Abercrombie did a good job of giving us these bits and pieces of them, and then Pharaoh, who we'll talk about in spoilers, without uh, bogging us down, without getting us too far away from our main three. So I thought that he did well giving us those, but I definitely want more of this group
For
moving
sure.
forward.
Yeah.
So, on that note, we move into spoilers. Before we do that, we have your song. It goes like this. This is the part that we're going into spoilers. If you don't know the book, get out! Because this is the part that we're going into spoilers. It's time to learn what that Magi Bias is all about in spoilers. We see our characters come together as the Magi Baez is building a group to journey to the end of the world. Baez, his apprentice Quai, and Logan travel to Adua, the capital of the Union, where they are joined by a navigator, Brother Longfoot, to set up their journey. The group is the group is investigated by Glotka as his boss believes Baez to be a fake, as no one thinks the first of the Magi has survived for centuries and only now returned to the Union. To prove his identity, Baez leads a group into the House of the Maker, which has been sealed as long as anyone can remember. He retrieves an artifact that he hopes will help them contain the seed, a powerful magic that will help defeat a dark rising power. Another Magi comes to the city with a woman from across the world named Pharaoh. Baez asks her to join them when he learns she cannot feel pain or see colors. She detests she detests them, but agrees to join because she doesn't have many other options. Captain Luther wins the fencing contest with help from Bias's magic and is set to join the campaign in England and lead his company. He is conflicted because he has fallen in love with his best friend's sister Artie, who is of low birth and is not traditionally beautiful. He asks her to wait for him while he is at war, but is pulled from the ship at the last moment and added to Bias's group as a witness for the union of the Magi's actions. Before they are able to leave, Pharaoh and Logan are attacked by 20 practicals, who are the henchmen of the Inquisitors. When it appears that all hope is lost, Logan loses control of himself and becomes the fabled Bloody Nine, a being that doesn't feel pain, has unlimited resources of strength and power. He is able to kill or injure enough of the practicals for he and Pharaoh to escape, but takes heavy damage in the battle. The Archlector, who is in charge of the Inquisitors, is furious that they were unable to capture Logan and Pharaoh. After berating Glotka's superior, he sends Sand into his office and tells him that he is to set sail for Dagosca and become the new Superior Inquisitor there after the last man has gone missing and the city is rife with betrayal and danger. Glotka is surprised by this but cannot say no to the assignment. It is unfortunate as he had just found a bit of his old self while reuniting with an old friend, Colum West, and agreeing to watch over his sister Artie as Colum went to war. The story ends with Glotka preparing to leave for Dagosca and Baez's group setting sail for the end of the world. So, before we get more into the story, we have more characters to talk about. So, let's talk about our Magi. What did you think of Baez?
It seems like he should be the good wizard, but I'm not sure I trust him. Like some of the stuff he does and says seems a little sus. Um, it sort of comes back to the mythology we're talking about. Like the stories kind of paint him in a good light. And so I'm assuming that that's accurate, but I don't know. I just feel like there sometimes the way that he's described, like a, look of whatever flits across his face, and I'm like, do we really know what his motivations are? Obviously it sounds like he wants to reinstate magic or whatever, get that back, and I think that's valuable for the world or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. It's cool because he's so powerful and he's pretty funny actually. But yeah, I'm not sure I trust him.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where he's been around long enough that he's seen enough that you don't. I think this is again kind of similar to Glocka, where the what you read on the back, the line between hero and villain is sharp as a
Mm,
knife. I do feel like Baez is one of those too, because even with his friends, or whatever, his apprentice and the rest of the group, you can see when he is questioned that kind of anger sparks in him. And I don't
mhm.
know if it matters who you are in that moment,
Right.
because why are you questioning him? Like it's a little bit of his I don't know if it's pride or just ego, where he's like, "How dare you question me? I am the first of the Magi,
I'm so
uh,
powerful.
and this is going to come out." I did like when Logan first met him, how it was like the janitor or something, or the butler that he thought because of the way he was dressed. He's like, "Oh, you must be
Yes.
the magician," and instead it's the guy who's overworking in the blacksmith's
Uh-huh.
area with like the bald head and everything. So I like that he's at least not what you would classically think of as a magician. And even when the
Sure.
people of Adua meet him, they're like, "You're not him." And they have
Right.
statues of
You don't look
Baez.
like that guy.
Like, I mean, maybe if you put on 20 pounds, but it doesn't really look like you, does it?
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I agree. Like, we don't know supposedly, because we learn about the eaters, which are these people. That's the second law that they're breaking, is you don't eat human flesh, and because of that, they've become something other, something more powerful. They've touched the other side way too much. But we learn that there's another being that is supposedly creating an army of these eaters, and it sounds like that's what Baez is trying to find the seed and use to stop.
Mm.
But again, in a book that's just talking about everybody looking for power, I worry that there's something more to those plans. As he's created this group of Avengers basically with,
Yeah.
this barbarian that just sees blood and goes crazy, and a woman who can't feel pain, and a fencing champion, and a very annoying navigator. Like it seems like it's a who's who of, if I wanted to have a little group to fuck up the world, this is where I'd start.
That navigator, the narrator when I was listening to the portions of the book, spectacular. I loved the character because he was so like funny sounding and like I mean not even funny sounding. He just had a good accent for it and like the energy was just like top notch energy.
Yeah, very puppy dog-ish. Like,
Oh my
what can
God,
I do?
yeah.
How can I help you? What can Brother Longfoot do for you today?
Yeah.
Uh, I did think also, adding back to Baez, like there's some of that intrigue as he goes into the Maker's house.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, he has the key, which is how he proves it's him, because supposedly the original Baez had picked up the key. But then to be able to, as the group sees, guide them through that basically ever-changing house.
Yeah.
Uh, and know it so well, and kind of know some of the history of it. I think it will be interesting. I assume, this is my guess. We learned that the Maker had a daughter that he supposedly threw off the House of the Maker before he was killed. It definitely sounded like Baez and that daughter were like a
Had
thing at some
something.
point, right?
Well, so the other magi that comes into the picture with Pharaoh mentions something about like, you know, protect Pharaoh like you protected the daughter kind of thing. Like, so I suppose it could be like a weird sexual thing, but it also could just be like that was somebody that he actually cared about. I also had a hard time with the seed, not thinking that it was a kid,
Yeah. Well,
which like
yeah. I
I don't know.
pictured just like your typical magical orb or something, but they
That
say
makes
when
more sense. But like when I first heard seed, I was like, oh, there's a child involved. Like we're talking about
it could
like a,
be.
or it's like an orb of sperm.
I think it's less likely that. But they talk
Really?
about how the seed went missing after the fall of the Maker, so who knows? It could have been
Yeah,
something.
well, because like the daughter got pushed off. Like, did they find a body? Like, is she dead or did she get like put somewhere else? I don't
Should become something else. Who knows?
know.
There's just a lot of layers. Again, it's like all these characters. I think there's that surface level, but as soon as you start thinking below that, there could be a lot more to that, which who knows how that's going to go. And speaking of that, our last character we're going to touch on, unless we touch on more in additional spoilers, is a woman named Farah. I was wondering what stood out to you about her.
Such a badass. Totally like I guess you could call her strong female secondary, not lead. Her backstory is super interesting because we only get little snippets of it. Like she's somebody who's been basically hunted her whole life, so she's got survival mode on at all times, which obviously makes her very distrusting of people and um I don't know, I don't feel like we learned quite a lot about her. Um, but she seems like she's going to be a really quality tool.
Yeah. I think it's just so interesting how, like, what part does she play? Because
Yeah.
when they mention that she doesn't feel pain, I think Baez says something that she'll be like the one to carry the artifact or something like that. So assuming that the seed or whatever they end up finding is incredibly painful for people to bear. So okay, but what's with the color thing? The fact that she
Yeah,
doesn't see color. Why is that so important as well? Like, is this some kind of prophecy or what? Like, I appreciate that you gave us a really cool character, and again, you didn't answer the most obvious questions for us. You left us wanting
why
on
does it
that.
matter? Yeah. I mean, I think that it's a similar thing to Logan's ability to speak with the spirits, people that just sort of have some type of connection. Maybe the color thing means something that we don't know about yet, which I
Yeah,
agree, like kind of frustrating to be introducing people who are going to presumably be integral to the plot or the narrative, and we don't really understand why.
yeah,
But again, that's like it's just the whole concept of where the story is going is just so heavy, not heavy, but like there's just a lot going on that you're like, it's hard to keep track of who, where, when, why, what.
yeah, yeah. And for her, where was I going? Yeah, and for her, like with the backstory points you're touching on, like we learned she's been a slave her entire life and how she's willing to do anything for her freedom, even to the point where she runs away from that other magi when she's not supposed to. And then I guess the eaters have like a special, they're drawn to her because of, again, something about her. Like there's just so much mystery around her when it comes to magic and the magical
Mhm.
beings of this world. Uh, that and the fact that like they could hurt her, but she was still like able to recover and everything. Like I remember them making a
She
big
healed
point about
super
that
fast.
too. So there's just so many questions surrounding her, and like you said,
And
strong female lead, very interesting to read, and a character that you introduce in the middle that I wasn't upset about.
totally, totally. I also, to your point about the magic or like magic is attracted to her or whatever, it didn't seem to me like she had any abilities of her own. Like she wasn't doing any magic of her
Right.
own.
Yeah, not that she knew of, unless it's
Yeah.
something that passive magic or
Yeah,
something that
yeah.
she has in
Like the
her. But yeah,
healing or whatever. Yeah.
be interesting to know if she had some kind of, it's like a familiar thing passed down through bloodlines.
Yeah, I was gonna say some hereditary something or other.
I liked the back and forth we got with her and Logan at the end as they're running to save their own lives, and
Mm.
like how she's this like fit younger woman who's
Oh
able
my
to do all
God,
these
I
jumps
felt
and
that.
shit, and Logan's just like
I was
barely
like, I'm
hanging
so
on
tired.
so
I'm
many
so
times.
everything hurts. I
My
was like,
fucking
breathe,
knees, stop
Logan.
making me jump.
Yeah.
Uh, I loved that back and forth, and then when he's like, "Why
Yeah.
do you keep calling us pinks?" Because she calls
You can't
everybody a
see
pink,
color.
and because you can't see color, she's like, "Well, you're pink, aren't you?" And he's like, "I
Actually.
guess."
That was
I
funny.
I'm interested to see them continue to grow that because I feel like that will be
Totally.
funny.
Well, and I appreciated them as like a team in the combat sense.
Yeah, working well together. And then even when was overcome by the Bloody Nine, she's like, "Whoa, big guy, same side." And like he mentions, like, I know there's a part of me that knows she's the same side, but also I want to kill her too.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciated how she after that happened and he like got overtaken by the Bloody Nine and then was all like everything hurts again. She was like, okay, one chance, and she said it like 8 times. I
Yeah.
was like, you're beyond the one
Yeah.
there, Pharaoh, but
And he fell down. Okay, one chance. He fell down. You only get one chance.
one chance.
Yeah, I think their relationship's going to be something that's really cool.
Yeah.
Just as because it seems like it's a mutual respect of like killers, basically.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes on. Speaking of our characters, we see growth from all three of our mains, with Luther and Glotka becoming more human and Logan becoming less. I was wondering what you thought of their arc so far by the time we got to the end of our story.
So, I mean, I think that Luther's arc is the most surprising, kind of like what we talked about on the outset with him. He was sort of the most immediately character. So towards the end to have him not necessarily about face, but he even with his relationship with Artie, like kind of comes not to grips with, but he sort of starts to recognize a little bit, looks in the mirror, sees that maybe he's a little bit selfish, that maybe he's not doing people justice by, you know, quick shot judging them. And maybe, I don't know, it's just interesting to me that he would find Artie so attractive, given that, I mean, he even says this at one point, like, she doesn't like him.
Yeah.
Like, he says that, and that's what makes him all the more, or her more attractive to him. Um, which is, I get that whole opposites attract thing, but um, I don't know. I appreciate the change and the evolution, but I'm not sure that I'm convinced it's here to stay.
Fair. I mean, I think if he went off to war and just kind of continued that life he knew with the people, like the friends that he has, quote unquote
Hmm.
friends that he looks down upon, I
Hmm.
could see him much more likely falling back into the old
Mm.
ways, especially as that war, and they're like, "Oh, we'll be home by winter," and West is like, "We'll be lucky to be home by next winter, you dummies."
Yeah.
I can see
Yeah.
as that drags on that he kind of loses that, or maybe it's the absence makes the heart grow fonder thing. Who knows? But I think he would definitely fall back into seeing himself superior. I think after Logan comes in with Pharaoh, or Pharaoh basically drops Logan on the floor, and then
Mhm.
the practicals join the room, and he's sitting there thinking, basically, aside from the navigator, he is the weakest one in this party, which he has
Mm.
never been before,
Wow.
and his
Yeah.
status means nothing. I think if that continues on, we're going to see a
Mhm.
lot more growth in him as
Good.
he like is kind of put in his place
Uh-huh.
because just based on strength, like the way it used to be, the strong survive, whatever. I can see like he'll hold his own, but also he'll realize that he's incredibly outmatched by the others of this party.
Sure, sure. And that sort of recognition that you're not as much of the shit as you thought you were.
Yeah. And even with winning the tournament, like I think Baez has
Oh,
given him a wink and a nod, although he hasn't come right out and said like, "Hey, my magic fucking helped you."
I don't think that Luther has gotten that yet. Like, I don't think he's understood that Baez is because he doesn't believe that Baez is Baez either. Like,
Well, he does now, though. He didn't at the
I
time.
guess. Okay, that's true. But like, I guess that's true. When the guy got exploded, he was like, "Oh shit." That's
I I think it's I think if he puts that together, it would be interesting to see if that changes him too. Because even winning, I felt like it wasn't what he expected it to be, and obviously the king ruined it by being a fucking crazy person and
Yeah.
mistaking him for his son. But like, I think there's a part of him that knows that was unnatural to recover in such a way that definitely wasn't happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the fact that it kind of like peaked and valleyed during the match, he was like, "Oh, all of a sudden I'm feeling great and I have no pain." And then like all the pain came back and all of the tiredness. And it's sort of like you got to recognize that that's not you, dude.
Yeah. So you touched on it briefly, but what did you think about his and Artie's relationship and their forbidden love?
Uh, uh, I don't really care,
Yeah,
to put it plainly. I think Artie was kind of fucking with him. Like, I don't think she really, I don't think it was genuine on her part in any way, shape, or form, but I do think that she is recognizing some changes in him. So I don't think she's necessarily just stringing him along for fun. I do feel like perhaps there's more at play than just doing something to piss her brother off. Um, but I'm not really sure what kind of role she's going to play in the whole story because she seemed a little bit just like a um an object at a lot of points for people.
I think the others in the story definitely saw her as an object, and she's trying to rebuke that as much as possible. Like I liked that she stood out from the other woman of the time
Sure.
or whatever, not just for how she looks, but how she acts and
Next.
with her
Yeah.
drinking and everything else, and
Yeah.
how she'll stand up to them. I do agree that I thought she was just stringing him along for fun, and also she knew it would piss off her brother, and she was
Mhm.
bored and whatever.
Mhm.
I did find it interesting her saying she would wait for him. I don't know if that's her just
I'm not sure
continuing to
that I
fuck with
believe
him or
it
not.
though
Yeah.
either. I
She doesn't seem like that kind of person, but maybe like you said, she's seeing there's some kind of change in him that she's like,
willing
maybe.
to yeah, stick around for the results.
Yeah.
I honestly would prefer more of a not necessarily like a romantic relationship, but I want more interactions with her and Glokta because I feel like that there was better chemistry and they kind of have more in common in terms of how people look at them
Yeah.
and obviously for different reasons. But I don't know. I think that could appreciate their friendship, um, getting more, I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't
I mean, I
I
don't
don't
know
know
how
if
to
it
say
makes I don't know if it makes sense or not, but I hope that he brings
it.
her to Dagosca with him because
Yeah,
that
like
last scene that they shared together, like you said, you see that kind of coy smile between them as they realize like we're
they
very
have a lot of
similar.
similarities.
People
Yeah.
underestimate us and just look past us for our looks and everything, but there's a lot more going on here, and we have been through shit.
Yes. Yeah, and very kind of similar shit when you think about it.
Yeah,
Like a lot of her stuff is obviously at the moment is outward facing, but a lot of her stuff is like internal emotional trauma. But I also think that she would be a valuable tool for him in terms of um, not necessarily in like inquisitor style, but I imagine, especially where he's headed and how there's going to be like intrigue and stuff, like you're saying, she would maybe be somebody he could trust to be
right.
spy network style.
I
So
did.
that would be cool,
Yeah, I really hope it does. I don't know why else you would set it up that way,
right?
especially when he talks about like even with the practicals he's bringing, because he's bringing his two, which he does trust, but then he has the other four, one of which he really doesn't trust, to a place where you can't trust anybody. I feel like that connection, and also because she's so fucking bored,
Yeah.
and you can play it off like, oh, you told me to look after her. Well, I had to leave, so I
No, I
brought her
can
with
only
me.
do that if she's with me. Yeah. Although I will say that other practical, that was the redhead, like in the moment when she was fighting, Logan and Pharaoh, I didn't like her. But then at the end, when Glokta and her were talking, I was like, wow, there's some similarities there. And even Glokta was sort of like, oh, it felt so good to like walk faster than somebody else.
Yeah.
And like, I think that there's potentially an ally there that he does like, I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
she's just playing the game.
she could turn into somebody cool. And again, just being on the wrong side of our heroes
Exactly.
puts you against her. But yeah, she could be somebody. So yeah, there and just moving into Glocka now, I felt like that his story is the most intriguing moving forward.
Hmm.
Like, granted, Logan and Luther are now together. We'll see if they last that way or if the group gets split or whatever. But like his, just because Glocka is dealing with so many like bigger things, like the other two seem like they're going on a treasure hunt, which will
Yeah,
obviously go awry and shit will
of
happen.
course.
But I think just the mystery that surrounds Glotka and what he's going to get into, that is what draws me to him the most, to like continuing the story the most.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, for
I
sure. I do really want to see um Logan meet up with his merry band again though. So
fair, fair. It'll be hard to do on the other side of the world. It's like they
aren't
need
they
to put some
both, didn't they
achievements
just
in.
say they were going to England though? Aren't
Yeah,
isn't
but
every
England, I think they're crossing the sea. I don't know. Again, a map.
Oh, they're
Not
going
what
to
I
the
have
edge of the
here.
world or
Yeah.
whatever. Okay, okay, okay.
I think, well, yeah, because they got the navigator to get them a ship, so
Yeah.
they're worried about that. Ferglaka and his growth. What did you think about how quickly, like, the Grinch's heart grew three sizes just by West telling him that I did come to your house twice, like your mother turned me away both times.
That wasn't all that surprising to me because I think he's gotten himself so um down in the pits with his sort of expectation of people that it didn't even, like you said, it didn't even cross his mind to think that his mother would have turned West away. Like she always hated him and like he, I think, given his circumstances, is always going to expect the worst of people. Um, so I think it makes sense that he kind of had an about face with that knowledge. Um, I don't think that I think that the softening of his heart is good a little bit. At this point in time, I don't think West is deserving of friendship because he just his character arc made me so mad.
Yeah.
Um, and like, I guess it's understandable, but it also was very frustrating. And I did not, especially because, anyway, Glocta is who we're talking about. Yeah, I think it was a little maybe too easy, but I also think because it was who it was, like West was one of his best friends. And like, I can imagine having your heart hardened for so many years, coming back and being in the state that he was in and people aren't looking him up and trying to be friends with him again. And then it gets to the point where you're like kind of beyond the point where that's acceptable to do, or it gets so awkward to do that it kind of makes sense to me that they stumbled into this situation. Um, and I think he deserves at least a little bit of happiness. And if that happiness is just knowing that his friend didn't totally ignore him, that's something. Yeah,
Yeah, and
no.
I agree. Like, I can see how it could happen. It did seem a little quick to me, but I also appreciate that the way it was shown, it felt like just kind of like a door peeking open, where like
Hmm.
it's just as they're going to leave that conversation, he's like, it's whatever the family name. This was the name of those sisters. And he had mentioned when West originally brought it up, he's like, that part of me's dead. Like, I don't remember anything before the torture, blah, blah, blah. So I like that it wasn't like exactly three sizes that his heart grew, but maybe just one.
Just maybe one. Yeah,
Yeah.
which I think like that at least shows that he's capable of that. And so going forward with whatever happens with Artie or like where he's going and all the shit that the shitstorm he's walking into, like maybe he'll have a little bit of a different outlook if he's not expecting the worst of the people that he at one point trusted. I don't
Yeah. And without that, his conversation with Artie
know.
would have he probably would have never had it because
He
he wouldn't
wouldn't
have
have
taken
gone.
Wes
Yeah,
seriously
totally.
on going to talk to her. So
Totally.
I do hope he continues to grow. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens to him, like you're saying, as he takes this new approach on his job as he
Yeah.
keeps moving up the ladder. So we mentioned Colin West a few times. I had him in additional spoilers, but felt like you really wanted to say something there. So let's
Oh,
jump
I'm
to him
just
before we go to Luther.
so
Or sorry, Logan.
disappointed. So disappointed in him. I like really didn't see it coming. It was incredibly aggressive.
Yeah,
Um, and like the aftermath was so fucking typical
typical.
abuser that I was just like disappointed is the only term that is coming to my mind right now, but it was just frustrating because his character was kind of the one that you want to succeed in terms of like what you were talking about before. Born a commoner, rose through the ranks due to his merit and like the things that he's done and the his attitude in general and like just so disappointed. And he seemed disappointed in himself as well, which I guess is great, but my dude. Like the abuse, like hurt people, but fuck. That was just really not okay. And I loved her sort of response in the moment. Like he even says like it would have been better if she'd cried and like been, I don't know, more outwardly whatever. And she was like, seen this coming.
Yeah.
And like just such a strong lady. And he just made me so mad. And I really wanted to like him. I wanted to continue liking him. And now I have a completely different outlook on him. And he did end up going with the ship to war, right? Like he was
Yeah, he's
supposed
gone
to.
to England.
Okay.
Yeah, it reminded me of those last Tamara Pierce books that I read, the Becky Cooper ones, where,
Mm.
and to be fair, this was in the first book, but it was towards the end of the first book, but a character takes a 180. At the end of the third book in that, a character took an incredible 180 that fucking ruined it for me. And I was like, this makes no sense for who the character is. And like, granted, I guess, they say it's because their father abused both of them and hurt people, whatever. So sure, I guess you can say it that way. But like West had never shown any side of that.
That's a thing. I guess like he does bring up that, he leaves and comes to Adjua or whatever, and he's free of that situation.
Yeah.
And so you don't it like being free from it, perhaps he's never had a trigger, so to speak, that would bring him back to that mindset. And then Artie shows up and it's like a sleeper agent.
Yeah.
Um, Not excusing what he did at all, but it would make sense to me that like from a character standpoint, we don't know that he's capable of that because he's never been in a scenario where
And
it would
to be
trigger.
fair, for those who haven't read the book, he hits her multiple times.
Strangles her, like
Yeah.
leaves
So,
her bruised and bloody.
yeah, physically abuses his sister because of her being a drunk and her flirting with Luther and all this.
And her not caring what other people think about her
And
seeing,
the name, the
yeah,
West name, that what he has built up. Yeah,
being very selfish and priggish, and I don't like it.
yeah. It was very, very upsetting. And yeah, I did not appreciate that we just took a character that seemed to be our level guy and just kind of threw him off the cliff right at the end there.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting. And we got pieces of him, especially as it came to like setting up the war and stuff like that. So it'd be interesting to see if we continue with a little bit of his point of view every once in a while, or what actually happens to West as he goes
Well,
to England.
I mean, he got a pretty high appointment, right, in the army or
Yeah, he's
whatever,
like a right-hand man of
a
the
marshal or
whoever's
something.
leading it or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it'll probably be an important part.
Yeah. Yeah, that was so disappointing.
Yeah, it was yeah, one of those moments where like, why? Why?
Yeah. It was happening, and I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here for this.
Yeah. No.
Finally, we have Logan and his transformation into the Bloody Nine. And we can kind of talk about that whole last fight sequence with Pharaoh. We kind of touched on it a little bit before, just seeing how they fought together and all that. It was, for me, one of those moments, like when, spoilers and spoilers, Jon Snow gets stabbed to death in season 5 or whatever it was of Game of Thrones. And I was like, we spent too
Yeah.
much time and there's not enough answers here. So if Jon Snow dies, I'll be pissed. And I kind of felt that way about Logan. I was like, if you sacrifice him at the end of the first book, knowing there's 3,
Yeah.
that's a fucking waste. Complete 180 when we see that this is where the Bloody Nine comes in. And
I didn't realize that they were like two separate.
yeah, it was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yes. I also
Where,
like Hulk because he
yeah,
like,
exactly. He's like, oh, Bruce is in trouble. Here comes the Hulk.
yeah.
I loved that side of it. I loved that there were distinct personalities
Mhm.
that knew they're fighting for control of the body because
Mhm.
both of them were trying to stop the other one from taking control.
Yes. I thought that was super interesting and like does kind of come back to what you were saying about maybe your theory that Pharaoh's got some sort of magical thing. It feels like maybe that's his version of
Yeah.
that or a mirror, whatever, you know what I'm saying. Yeah, super interesting. And that scene or that whole fight scenario was pretty cool. I especially just loved how brutal it felt. Like, I mean, obviously the killings that the Bloody Nine was enacting on all these people, but also the before and after, like the Logan being like, "Oh, yeah, I'm literally out of gas. I've got nothing left." And then afterward, like you see all the shit. It's like a montage in a movie where there's badass music and everyone's just dying around him. And then when Logan takes back over from the Bloody Nine, he's like, yeah, everything hurts."
Everything hurts more now.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like the last bit where he's like basically just shattering this other guy's face with his own face, I was like, oh my God.
Oh, and the fact that this is like a giant, and while he's doing it, he's like, "You're the one who beat Tulduru or whatever, who's also a giant. You can defeat this guy," and he's just bashing his fucking forehead into his face.
Man.
Insane. And this, you touched on this before we started recording, like that last few chapters, I think was more what we were expecting for this
For the
entire
whole
story.
book, which I think is what maybe brought the whole thing not down for me. I only gave it 3 stars on Goodreads, which maybe was a little harsh, but I had a hard time getting super into it. I think because I was used to the pacing in his other series is probably one of the most amazing pacings for a book I've ever
Yeah.
read. Where just so much is happening in kind of not like a little span of time, but like there's the pacing is just so good and keeps you so page turning that I was a little shocked. I mean, again, it being a debut novel, it kind of makes more sense that he maybe hasn't hit his stride quite yet. Um, but yeah, it was a slog for some of it. Some bits were interesting, don't get me wrong, and like the world building's really cool, but then those last couple chapters, I was like, whoa.
Yeah, because he gives us taste of that action, with Pharaoh fighting off some people,
Mhm.
with
His merry
Luther
band.
and his like attack or fights, whatever. When Baez and them are trying to make it to a duo, like we have little conflicts, but yeah, like you said in that other series, we like filled in the gaps with character building, and it was just one scene to the next, basically. So, uh, yeah, maybe a little disservice having read those first and expecting
Maybe.
that, but having that as your ending, like immediately, I was like, okay, now I want more. Like
Yeah,
we've
I
done
am
good with the
intrigued
base
for
coat.
sure.
I'm
Yeah,
ready. I'm ready to
yeah,
read more of this stuff.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm interested to see what happens. Also, again, like just having two names and like adding the Bloody Nine to that, I was like, that's fucking sick.
Such a badass. And again, like you were saying, I didn't realize that it was gonna be like that. I just thought that those were his two, like those were his
Yeah,
nicknames, not like that they're totally different people. And I thought it was funny, like you were saying, where the guy was like, "No, you're not that guy.
yeah,
There's no way you're that guy."
yeah.
He's like, "Let me show you."
Let me bash my face into your face until you realize it. Um, for additional spoilers, I had his companions and their story. We kind of touched on that, and Artie and Colm West. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on with those two, or anything else you wanted to talk about?
Mm, not really. I think we covered everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
again, it's mostly just talking about the characters and like, yeah, like they have their own little triumphs and whatever, trials and triumphs, but it was mostly just setting it up. So I'm interested now that we have that, if he's going to continue this way or if it's going to be
Mhm.
more of like his action that we've seen in other stories.
That's an interesting point. I wonder if we'll get anybody else's internal monologues or if it'll just stay as Glock does. Because if they're separated like this, maybe
Yeah.
there's more value in that. I don't know.
Or if he feels like he needs to, or like
The
the
stage is
stage has been
set.
set, so like we kind of know enough about Glocka that we don't really need that, but.
Yeah.
So, on that note, we are going to move out of spoilers and moving out of spoilers, but not away from the book. We have to finish by giving it our grade. We do this with the D&D D20 scale. So, 1 is bad, 20 is good, and then we add or subtract a character modifier, ability, skill from the game Dungeons and Dragons that we think best fits the book. We alternate every episode, and this time it is my turn to go first. For me, uh, I definitely was in a bit of a haze as I was reading this. Again, just having it be so character based and so long, it was a little bit difficult to get into it at times, but still, it was one of those ones where it felt like a show, where I was like, I need to get back to these characters. Like, oh, what was that I was watching? I wasn't, I was reading it. So there's something to be said about that. Like Luther annoyed the fuck out of me as I was reading him, but it wasn't like chapters were incredibly long and bogged you down. And also, he did well at rotating them, so we weren't, wheel of timing, staying with one character for 3 chapters. All that being said, the action sequences I really enjoyed, as we were just touching on. The last bit really sets it up to see where this goes. I have already bought the second book, so I will be getting into that because I want to see, like, again, having been proven with the other series, I'm willing to.
Try it
If
out.
this was somebody else, I would still give it a chance, but because the other series, I'm like moving it forward in the line, basically.
Yeah.
So for me, overall, I'm giving it a 16. I think it's a good piece of fantasy. There's the world building in there. I think there's a heavy level of intrigue. It will really depend on how he lands the plane with all this mythology building, politicking, magic, 75 different characters. If he does well in this, and the second book's always the hardest. So if he does well enough in the second book to keep it going, I'll be very interested. So I think this is a good base layer, introducing us in a little bit different way, where we really focused on the characters and not so much the world and the conflicts within. For a role, I'm giving it a +1 for intimidation because I
Mm.
feel like all these characters have that other side of them that I would not want to see in a well-lit alley, let alone a dark alley. Where I think he did a good job of bringing that. All the stuff on the back is like, oh, it's violent action and intrigue, and it's bloody this and bloody that. He definitely delivers that with a lot of his characters, and like Baez just being able to like snap his fingers and explode somebody.
Badass.
That's terrifying. And then Logan with the Bloody Nine, Pharaoh with her reactions to everything. I just think there's a lot of very scary characters that we're rooting for. And I think that's again going back to the line on the back of the book saying the line between hero and villain is a razor sharp edge or whatever. So yeah, overall I really enjoyed it. I am going to continue this story and let you know how it goes. And I'm hoping that it will live up to the other series as it moves forward. So overall, for me, that's a 17.
Nice. Um, yeah, I'm gonna give it a straight roll of 14, which does kind of feel a little low, but I think I had a hard time getting super invested in it, and I think some of that was um because of how kind of complicated and confusing some of the world building aspects were. I do agree that the focus on the characters was pretty interesting and definitely something that you don't necessarily see a lot of. I mean, I'm going to keep comparing it to the Bloodsworn trilogy because I think that there's a lot of similarities in terms of the character POVs and kind of building the knowledge of the world through the characters. And I did really like that. Um, I don't, I'm not going to run out and get it, but I am curious to know where this goes. Like you said, that other series of his is so good that I wouldn't be surprised if he lands the plane well here. And it's definitely intriguing enough to keep me going. Um, a little bit. I'm not again, not gonna like run out and get it, but it definitely is something that I would read or listen to or whatever. And then I'm gonna give it a +1 for history, because I think that a lot of what we sort of start to learn about the maker and the kind of past, how the past is kind of going to inform what they are doing now, especially Baez and Logan and them. It feels very much like they're on a quest for whatever it is they think is going to save the magic or whatever. But I think that we're getting it as a reader kind of piecemeal, which maybe is good. Um, but it leaves it a little unclear as to I'm not sure who and like I'm not sure exactly what the purpose of everything is. I don't know who is on the good side or the bad side or who I should be rooting for. And maybe that makes it more intriguing. But I don't have a lot of historical context because they haven't given us the tools for that just yet. So yeah, it's a 15 total.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely leaves it open for like anybody can be a double crosser at any moment,
Totally.
which is interesting
Interesting.
to see how he goes because we want to, oh, these are all our characters. We expect them to be the good guys, and
Right.
they're
Right.
not.
Might not be true. Yeah.
So yeah, it will be interesting to see how that goes. I should have more on that in the next, 2 months or whatever, once I get to that book, and everything. So, for the last time, it was The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, the first in the First Law series. So you can find that literally everywhere and anywhere if you want to check that out. Now, moving away from the book, but not quite done with the episode yet. We go to our segments. We start with current selection, Taja. Is there anything else that you have been reading or listening to in your free time?
So I think I don't remember if I finished Yumi and the Nightmare Painter last
I don't
episode.
think you had.
Okay, well, I did finish it and it was lovely. Yeah, really enjoyed it. It was neat to listen to because it was like a dual narrator, like a man and a woman. So like the changing of the POVs or whatever was interesting. Um, really cute ending, really cute like epilogue situation. It felt like the comfiest, warmest, pumpkin spiciest bows. And I really liked it. At first, I was like, oh no, he's doing the thing where, I can applaud an author for doing it, but I really wanted them to,
Yeah,
for it to be a happy ending. And then I was very pleased with where he took it. I think he's just a spectacular author.
yeah. I've come across like I was thrift storing the other day for Dragon Con stuff, so a few weeks ago, and the one over in Amherst had four of his books, so I just picked them all up. Yeah,
Nice.
like most of them are like YA stuff for him, but I was still like, my shelf is getting too much. I went from 0 to 1,000 Brandon Sanderson's really quickly.
I mean, quality stuff. I saw that
It's true.
Nern is reading it right now too, so
Yeah, I
hopefully
saw
she.
that as well.
Yeah, it was really good. And then I just started listening to Right Story, Wrong Story: How to Have Fearless Conversations in Hell by Tyson Yunka Porta. He's an Indigenous Australian who's basically, um, I mean, he's written like a bunch of nonfiction things, and been in like research papers with other people, but it's like a, what does it say? Indigenous lens on contemporary society.
Hmm.
And it's really interesting. I love, this is going to sound very appropriate-y. I really am fascinated by Indigenous culture. I also love a book read by an Australian because who doesn't love that accent? He's really funny and it's just really, so far it's pretty interesting. I think I'm only like 3 or 4 chapters deep, so not super far. It's tough to listen to and not kind of like zone out because his voice is so soothing. And some of the stuff he's talking about is pretty deep, so I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really, I like smattering this kind of stuff in with my magic and fantasy and sci-fi things. So yeah, it's nice to, I guess, be looking at society and the dumpster fire that is the US or the world, humanity, um, through the lens of people who really care for the land and connection to people. And yeah, it's interesting.
Um, yeah, I do appreciate those stories more and more, as you learn about their connection, like you said, to the land and to other people. I feel like we need a lot more of that
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So cool. I'm excited to hear how that turns
Yeah.
out. For me, I've read one other book. It was The Cheese Monkeys by Chip Kidd. This was the one I tried to tell you about last episode, but I couldn't remember anything about it. And it was written by an author who had worked in the jacket design for books in the past.
In that
So
industry,
he
yeah.
did he did like a lot of funky things with it to grab your eye. I mean, that's literally what grabbed my eye.
Book by
So
cover.
job well done. The book itself, this was one I was thinking because it looks so intriguing and interesting of doing as a surprise. I'm really glad I didn't. Thank you, Goodreads, for a bunch of people calling it pretentious. It was a bit pretentious. The story itself, it was about like a 1950s art school and a boy going there, and kind of he falls in love with an upperclassman who wants nothing to do with him, but she's so edgy and different and whatever. And then he gets into graphic art and then maybe falls in love with his professor and is just like really looking to people to give him people to build him up and everything. And he's like looking for an authority figure to like praise him. And there's like a weird scene in it. Um, and quite actually there's quite a few weird scenes in it. And then it ends, and I was just like, okay, we don't need to talk about that. So I'm very glad we didn't have to talk about that for 2 hours because I gave it to you as well. So yeah, so I read that, and then after I finished this, I jumped into Clariel by Garth Nix.
Oh yeah.
So getting back into the world of the abortion is interesting because it's all that stuff that sounds familiar, but it's been like
A long
probably
time.
3 years since I read those books.
I lent the trilogy to my coworker and she really loved it. And she was like, "Are there any more books in this world?" And I was like, "Yes, but mm. Because and then we'd like looked up Clariel and I was like, "Yeah, this one's a prequel, right?"
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was looking back and I was like, "Apparently I've read this, don't remember it."
Yeah, because I saw it in my bookstore and I sent it to you, and you're like, oh, I don't know if I know that one. I'm like, okay, maybe we'll do it for an episode because we haven't done a Garth Nix book yet. We've both read quite a bit of him because of you. And then we had that discussion. You're like, oh no, I've actually read this one. I'm like,
I have
okay,
read
well,
it.
I'll just read it then at some point. So,
Yeah. I
um,
again I don't remember it being like noteworthy enough to have even remembered reading it. So
it's interesting. We'll see how it goes. I'm 100 and something pages deep, and I'm not like struggling with it or anything. I just started it, I don't know, a day or two ago. So it's doing well pace-wise as far as that's
sure.
concerned.
Okay.
And like his writing is solid, and I think he
Yeah.
writes strong women well, and Clariel is
Mhm.
another one of those. So it's more just trying to remember his
The
world.
world.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
charter magic and what that
Yeah.
means, all that. Like we're not even dealing with the dead yet, and the
Hmm.
bells and all that. So like we'll see what happens. But yeah,
Yes.
again, just looking for like a change of pace and something that I knew I wouldn't confuse with the blade itself. So
That's fair.
yeah, it felt pretty good there. So on that note, we move to random recommendation. And this one comes to you from Dragon Con. It actually comes to you from T. Kingfisher, who we have read before with Nettle and Bone.
So
She
good.
was the spotlight author at Dragon Con, so we caught one of her panels. A very interesting person for sure. She
Hmm.
talks about her weird vortex, or their weird vortex that attracts very weird things towards them. So the book they recommended was The Hero and the Crown by Robin McKinley. And this is an older book. It came out in the 80s. It is known and appreciated for its depiction of a strong female heroine. Uh,
Love
th this was during a time where there wasn't that much representation, and it was mentioned in the Wikipedia article that it was basically McKinley, Tamara Pierce, and Patricia McKillop who all came up at the same time and started writing those strong female heroines for young girls to read in the fantasy genre because all of them grew up reading Tolkien
Yep.
and loving it, but also being like, hey,
Where's the female representation?
I think it was quoted that it was like, I loved that Eowyn was this strong woman, but the only reason she was involved was because she dressed
Because
like a
of a
man.
man. Yep.
So, a lot of critics have kind of said afterwards that it's a fantasy classic that more people need to become aware of. So, it's definitely something I think we should look into
Yeah.
in the future. I think she also mentioned it was like something she looks to for some kind of either character building or world building, something. There was a specific reason she had brought up McKinley's work. So, definitely something we will probably check out at some point, and you should too if you haven't. So again, it was The Hero and the Crown by Robin McKinley. I honestly, it's one of those ones like Mercedes Lackey. I remember I didn't remember seeing her anywhere until we did a mystery book with her,
Mm.
and then I see her everywhere. So I'm wondering if this will be another one next time I go to a bookstore. I'm like, oh hey, oh hey, oh yeah. She seems very well respected by the book
Fantasy.
world. Yeah. So on that note, we finish off with what is on the next podcast. And for this, we are going back to an author that we both loved, that was recommended to us by my friend's cousin Dave. If you remember the book Electric Kingdom by David Arnold, we are going to read on the next episode his debut novel, which was Mosquito Land, which is a novel about a young person taking a bus from her father to her mother. I think it's like Missouri to Ohio or something like that, and kind of the antics that follow and the people she meets along this trip, and kind of how it goes awry. So it was his debut novel. It was highly praised by a lot of people. We both loved Electric Kingdom, not just because it was set in New Hampshire. So I'm very excited to get into this. It was a book that Amanda got me for Christmas last year. So that will be on the next episode, which means this is the end of this episode. So thank you guys for listening. We've officially done it 102 times now. So this has been the ABC Club, the Adult Book. Nope. This has been the ABC Pod, the Adult Book Club with Taja and Russell.
Keep reading. Keep reading.
Keep reading.